Hi, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you all to Dr. Kahlila Robinson, who's a psychologist in private practice in New York City. She has comprehensive training and experience in parental mental health, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, adoption, and relational trauma treatment for adults. In addition to her clinical practice, she provides cognitive assessments to children and supervises child and adult psychology graduate students at City College here in New York. She's an advocate for the availability of high-quality mental health services for underserved and vulnerable populations. And on top of all that, she's also the author of the Self-Regulation Workbook for Children ages 5 to 8, which is what we're talking about today. Great to have you here. I'm so glad you were able to join us.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Coor. It's such an honor to be here and chatting with you.
Well, this is great. I'm really excited to have you here at Project Parenthood to talk to us about helping 5 to 8-year-olds with all of the big feelings that we know that they can have. So before we jump into about talking about self-regulation, just can you tell us a little bit more about your practice and just the clients and the presenting issues that you deal with that give you the most zhuzh, the most what you most love doing in your practice?
Yeah. So I work with children, individual therapy. I work with families, so parents and kids together in the room, and I work with adults individually. And I've always had a passion for working with parents. I think that it's such an amazing intersection psychologically for people in parenting, right? You have your own childhood in the mix and how you were raised and your own parents in mind and how that influences you. You have your adult self developmentally wherever you are in your development, right? You have your relationship with your child. If you have a partner, you have your relationship with your partner and all that, what that brings in the mix. So I love it because it's such a rich intersection. There's such depth and so many interesting things to learn about and reflect on and be with. So I find it really fascinating work.
Yes, indeed. I love that. It's so true what you're saying. The parenting situation has so many relational dynamics and systems within it.
Yes.
Right? And they're all so interesting. Me too.
Yes.
Right. That is why I do the work I do as well. So great. I'm so glad to know a little bit more, a little snapshot of your practice and the things that you like inside of your practice. And so let's start talking a little bit about regulation itself. What is that, when you're talking about regulation, right? I know that you and me kind of know what that is, but just for anybody who's listening who doesn't really know what we mean when we're talking about self-regulation or co-regulation, what do we mean when we're using these terms?
Regulation are the various ways that we manage through and communicate our feelings when they're happening. And these are typically more kind of intensive feelings, frustration, disappointment, sadness, also could be excitement in there, anger. But we feel a charge on our system, we get activated, it affects our brains, it impacts our physical system. And how do we manage through those moments when we're trying to get our needs met or trying to accomplish something? That's when we need emotion regulation skills. Things that help us soothe and calm ourselves in the moment, things that help us to communicate how we're feeling to other people. Those are some of the kind of emotion regulation skills that we need to move through the world, get things done. Some of it we develop naturally just through development and getting older and through maturity. A lot of it we develop through learning how to do it, through skills, through relationships. And so that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you're talking, all the different ways we learn those skills, right? If we learn those skills, sometimes we do learn them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes the relationships that we're in growing up teach them to us, or the, classroom situations we're in may teach them to us. And sometimes we actually have to be explicitly taught them sometimes if we didn't get them in those ways. And I think that's where your workbook comes in so handy.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes we observe others and how they're not regulated, right? Or how they're struggling through something. And those are also ways that we learn, right? And through those kind of extremes as well, in terms of seeing somebody have a reaction that's big or intense and using that as an example for how you react yourself, or as in contrast to how you want to react.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that we have a little bit of a feel for what regulation even is and what regulating emotions could look like and how it can help us. I work with lots of parents who sometimes can see like an emoting, a big emotion coming from a child, often as like misbehaving, right? Like they're doing something wrong depending on their own upbringing and the ways that they were sort of socialized around emotionality. And in my practice, it's, I really try to help parents see kids in a more positive light. And so, what kinds of things do you talk about in terms that help parents go from seeing their kid in a misbehaving way and more of a way of like, this kid might be struggling or doing the best they can? Like, what are some tips that this book gives for that kind of conundrum?
Yeah,
for a
sure.
parent?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard because especially when your child is between the ages of 5 through 8, they've developed a lot of skills. They've matured. They've developed some level of independence. And they've been able to maybe handle some things emotionally even better than they did when they were, 2, 3, 4, certainly, right? They're out in the world, they're on teams, they're in school, right? So I think in our minds, for a lot of us, we think, well, they can handle a lot more things now. Why can't they just deal with this? And we have a bit of a skewed sense of what they can manage developmentally because they're still so young, right? So reminders about development are really, really, really important. I think a lot of people know it by now, right? That the brain is not fully developed until our early to mid 20s, right? And so especially the frontal lobe, the part of our brain that helps us kind of anticipate consequences, keep rules in mind, like organize, plan, like name feelings, be able to help us with regulating feelings is not fully developed until 20 something, right? So keeping that as a reminder for yourself, there's actually nothing wrong with your child having a big emotion, having an intensive emotion that's actually quite normal developmentally is one way to consider, like having a bit more patience and understanding and keeping their behavior in context. And also with that in mind, tied to that, almost just this mantra of like, they're not doing it on purpose. They're not trying to make you upset, right? I know you're a Ross Greene fan, right? Like the kids do well when they can, like that whole concept that this is a developing skill. This is something they're working on. This is something they're not naturally born able to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's our role as parents to kind of hold compassion for that while supporting them, coaching them, helping them learn some skills when they're in the mindset to be able to learn.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So you're sort of talking about holding development in mind and behaving with compassion with that development in mind, giving some context to where your child is developmentally and giving some context to the big emotions they might be showing, right? That part of their brain that has those like emotional brakes that you could put on, right, doesn't really fully develop until their early 20s. And I might add that even beyond that, sometimes
Absolutely.
people have not yet developed that.
Right.
And, and it's hard. Sometimes we ask sometimes of 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds a level of self-control that we may not even have ourselves.
That's right. And then even just the idea of framing something as a misbehavior, that's not even necessarily that helpful. That doesn't really actually do much for you or for your child, right? It's like, okay, you can think of it as that way, but then what? Like, how does that actually help resolve the situation that you're in? So it's also just not effective to consider that framing, right? And you might want to use something else.
Yeah, something more helpful. It doesn't necessarily get you out of this pickle in the future or help anybody learn anything from this particular pickle, just by saying you're being bad, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I really love these points because, yes, I am a Ross Greene fan. I am a fan of, thinking of all of us, children and parents, as doing the best that we can do in any given moment. And so, there is a lot to think about. There is a lot to keep in mind, right? And life is moving really fast. And you talk in your book about caregiver reflection, right? And I know that parents are asking me this all the time, like how in the heat of the moment when, all of the things are hitting the fan and I'm about to lose it or my kid is losing it, like, how can I do more connecting and less reacting? Like, how can I do these reflections when things are really like happening so quickly all around me, right? That comes up so often.
It's actually I think it's a real challenge to do it in the moment when things are really activated and things are really intense. And I think the level of reflection that maybe we could ask for ourselves ideally is for self-reflection around just the physical state and the level of activation that you're in, right? And really registering for yourself, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting really heated right now. I notice my voice raising. I notice myself wanting to kind of, I don't know, do some like physical kind of like acting out even, right? Just really starting to increase our level of self-monitoring in those moments. Probably the best that we can do, right? Just getting a quick check for ourselves. Because otherwise, yeah, we do get hijacked. We do get taken away from being able to slow down and notice things and have some deeper reflection about the dynamics at play with your child. But if you can at least say, wait a minute, I can just notice that I'm getting really frustrated or angry, and just take a beat just to pay attention to that and know what your cues are. That's a way to then start to be able to pivot just a little bit by continuing just to focus on yourself.
I love that. Focusing on yourself is like such a great, because we do automatically focus on the child's behavior and like what we need to change about it. And it feels like an emergency. And sometimes it is just better. I remember when my child, who is now 9, but was in the toddler phase and threw a block at me one time, and it hit me in the face. And I remember just all the times that I had spoken to other parents about like, the first thing you do is just nothing. Just don't do anything. Because you know what I mean? And I just remember being like, just do nothing. Just do nothing. I was just repeating to myself, just do nothing. Like, what does it feel like? You know, just trying to focus on myself. Like, that really hurt. Makes sense that you're feeling angry. A block just hit your face. Like,
yes.
All of this is normal. Like, all your feelings are valid. And at the same time, this is a 3-year-old who doesn't know. Who doesn't realize that hurt me as much as it did. Doesn't have the breaks yet, doesn't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. Like, I had to tell myself all the things.
Right. And you're doing nothing on the outside, but really like inside your mind and inside of you, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot of really acknowledging what's going on and trying to remind yourself of the situation, right? There's a lot of work involved with doing nothing, right? And just
There's
being
so
able
much
to
work with doing nothing. That's true. Doing nothing is a big job.
Yes.
It is. In that particular moment, it's a huge job. It's a huge job. It feels like a lot. But the pausing and just slowing down, the just sort of like, let's just survey the situation, the internal situation first.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's safe, right? Like, it wasn't like there were a barrage of blocks coming at me. You know, it was one block that came at me.
Right.
And I think both of us were pretty stunned by it. So I don't think that my kid was realizing like, oh, well, that made contact with your face and you look like you're in pain. Like, I did not foresee any of those things.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't premeditated.
It wasn't premeditated. It was just like, I'm mad, I'm throwing things, and one of those things hit you. I think that just the pausing, just slowing down and attending to yourself, what is going on with you. And I've also found sometimes that even saying my process out loud, like, I can sometimes say like, I'm getting really angry. One of my favorites, I'm running out of kind words. I'm running out. I would very much like to speak to you kindly, but I am all out.
Right. I love that.
I need to take a break because I don't have any kind words in this moment.
Yep. The idea, like not adding fuel to the fire, not having a tantrum when they're having a tantrum, like all of that, all of those concepts of seeing what it's like to slow down just a little bit and giving yourself then an opportunity to continue to regulate yourself and focus on yourself. Yes.
I mean, this is just all so helpful. These are just such common situations parents find themselves in. And again, about the moving fast, you know, life is moving fast. Sometimes we are just trying to hold everyone together and trying to just get them through this daily routine, like just get to the next thing.
Right.
And so the slowing down and pausing is helpful. You know, like I said, like in that situation, things were moving slow enough for me to attend to myself. But, you know, sometimes it feels like such a rush. Like, you know, you have more than one child. I only have the one. I know that it's a lot when there's more than one child, perhaps even a partner who is also talking to you or trying to get something from you. There's a lot happening, and maybe little kids are having big feelings. And sometimes we are thinking we need to fix it. Like, I need to fix this so that we can keep moving through our day. And sometimes we try to like solve whatever is bothering them.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to not only sit with our own feelings, but to sit with theirs.
It's really hard for parents to tolerate disappointment and sadness and for all types of feelings in kids. And I think that's a real area to dive into for parents, because there can often be a lot of the past in those reactions when we're reacting to something in our child that's hard for us to tolerate. It's really useful to be curious about that and to kind of understand a little bit more about where that comes from. There's a mom that I know that gets she notices like she gets overly strong reaction triggered to her name being called over, mommy, mommy, mommy. And she remembered that her mom was somebody who would yell across the room all the time, or always, there was a big volume in her household and being her name called over and over again. And that kind of that like shudder down her spine when she'd hear her name called, and that she really had to notice that connection, right? Okay, this is something that really was hard for me as a kid, that made me feel uncomfortable. Now I'm an adult. This is my child. We're in a different situation, but really had to kind of shift and check herself around. Like, why am I getting so upset about this thing that's fairly normal for my kid to do? So considering all of the pieces that are at play when you're upset and angry with your child, not necessarily in that moment because it's too hard to do, but being curious and using curiosity really as a skill to support yourself in trying to understand why you're reacting to in the way that you are to your child.
And that may help you identify what is getting kicked up for me in the situation, right? Whether you can do that in the moment or at another time. And then also, what about when your child is just calling your name again and again? You've given the answer. They're like, but I really do want that cookie. And you already said no cookies until after dinner. But they're like, but what about now? What about now? What about now? What about now? Like,
I really love like stopping and like dropping down to my kids' level and really just being like, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I didn't get the full sense of like what the need is in the moment. Maybe there's something more I could understand that my child is not able to quite put into words, but I want to take a moment. So just really being like, wait a minute, we talked about this. We said no cookies tonight. Here I am. Tell me more. What's going on? Like just giving a little, what's hard about this right now? Really, again, giving that curiosity, to your child and the benefit of the doubt that maybe there's something that you're not quite picking up on in terms of what their needs are. They can't always put their needs into words.
Yes.
And then sometimes it's just bearing the disappointment that they're experiencing.
Yes. So tell me more about that. Tell me, what do we do when we're just bearing the disappointment? When they just sort of need us to be there with them with this big feeling and there's really nothing for us to fix or to solve or anything.
Right. One of the strategies that I use that I find really helpful especially when I'm losing patience, when my child is frustrated or overreacting to something is, well, maybe they're actually not upset about this thing. Maybe it's the opportunity, it's giving them an opportunity to actually release some pent up feelings about something else, right? Almost the idea of like something cathartic, like a cathartic cry that adults have, right? You stub your toe, but then you can cry it out about, the bad day you had at work or whatever. So that really helps me. I don't know if it's true or if it's not true for the kid in the moment, because I'm not sitting there asking, what are you really upset about the cookie? Or are you upset about, what happened at school that day? But it helps me in my own mind to imagine like they're having a good, healthy cry. Seem like they're having a big reaction about this small thing, but I can keep compassion because it's true that they can't always articulate something that's bothering them, something that happened, something from the previous week at school or something like that. And again, the idea that it just kind of opens the floodgates for them and lets them release something that's kind of pent up inside. And I try to keep that in mind as a strategy for myself, just to stay compassionate.
I love that idea. I try to think of it as like wringing yourself out like a cloth. Like I try to think about it like, well, they're not done wringing themselves out yet. There's still something in there they need to get out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
And they may not be able to talk about it, or even not. As you were talking just now, I was thinking, like, I don't even know. Like, there's times that I'm upset and I just know I want to cry, but I can't necessarily put my finger on exactly what's bothering me. I just like got to offload these big feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why when adults are sometimes surprised by how emotionally they can get watching a show or a movie or a commercial, right? It's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that emotion came out of me and it just hit that spot of like a tender spot inside and allowed you to release something that you didn't know necessarily that you were holding on to. And a lot of people feel lighter or better or more regulated after something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. And so I think I like your suggestion, this idea of like, imagine that they're just not done yet, that they have more to get out and maybe they can't put words to it like we so love to do in our society is if there's no words for it, then it just doesn't exist.
You're right,
you know
right.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe they just sometimes need a hug, right? I mean, that's what my kid, if I don't know what to do, my kid will take hugs, so I will offer one. And sometimes when I just don't know what else to do, I'll say, do you need a hug? And they'll be like, yes. And I'll be like, great, I got plenty of those.
Yeah.
That I can do.
If your child receives someone who is able to receive soothing, and that's one of the things that supports them and continuing to wring things out and release them, then absolutely, do that. I mean, this also comes from working with adults with relational trauma. They remember times where their parents left them feeling kind of overwhelmingly alone, or that they were told like, boys don't cry, or stop being angry, or you're getting too excited. Like, it really can stop people up emotionally from being able to accept and be with their authentic feelings, right? So what you do with your kid at this age can also set a bit of a template for them, in terms of their development and how their relationship to their own feelings, as they develop. So that's also really, really important. We want kids to be able to feel secure and being able to express whatever they're feeling and not have to pretend it's not there or to shut it off prematurely in order to maintain a relationship with somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could literally talk about this for the rest of my life. I'm super interested in this conversation. But at the same time, I want to think about those times with you, those times that like, we know all of these things, we know we should have paused and taken a little, internal check-in. We know we should have maybe left some more space for those big feelings. We know we maybe should have used kinder words or a kinder tone, but we didn't. That's not what happened.
Yep.
That's not what happened at all. And so what do we do when we do want to repair that relationship and we do want to, make things better again and reset? Like what do you talk about in the book that helps parents know what to do after they have maybe messed up as a parent?
Sure. Yeah, I think the process that I recommended, my co-author, Sarah Gertzen-Stang, I should mention her. She also contributed to the book. The recommendations that we make is to first do a repair for yourself as a parent, right? Oftentimes there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt. You messed up. You feel bad about what you said or did. And people stay stuck there and they don't do anything else, right? It's like, oof, this feels awful. Let me distract myself. Let me do something else. Let me get away from this feeling. But that's an opportunity to really do a repair with yourself, meaning understand where it was coming from again. What was the context in which you acted out in that way? I got frustrated with my daughter the other day and overly frustrated over a little mistake that she made. And I really had to ask myself what was going on. And I think I had just taken on too much that day, right? When you talk about being busy and there's so much going on, like sometimes we're taking on too much and we're putting too high expectations on ourselves. We have 30 minutes to like put a load of laundry in, go to the grocery store, pick up a kid and whatever else, you know what I mean? And call somebody back. And it's like, is that a good plan? Like, right? Like, how will you,
I set myself up for success at all here.
Right. Like, okay, there's a higher risk that you might end up getting really frustrated with your kid for doing something normal if you're putting too much on yourself, right? So like, in this situation, I had to say, well, what led up to me getting overly frustrated? And it was like, I was doing too much. Like, there was too much on me. And I think that I had less patience than I would have had otherwise if I had, maybe set up something a little differently. So first kind of doing that repair for yourself as a parent, understanding where it was coming from. Remind yourself, like, this is a really tough job. Parenting is really hard. I do it mostly well most of the time. Right. And it's really hard. And I'm doing it, if it's your first kid, even if your second kid, I'm doing it for the first time. There's no manual. Right. And that, being a good enough parent means that you have compassion for yourself and you put things into context. Right. So doing that repair for yourself really matters first, because that helps regulate you. Right. It helps you kind of understand more about where the behaviors were coming from and helps kind of regulate the guilt a bit. And then you really have to just take accountability and be the bigger person. And maybe it's a little uncomfortable, but you do want to be able to say, I'm sorry for acting in the way that I did, saying what I said. I didn't mean to take it out on you. You can be brief. It can be as brief as that. You can offer your child a chance to express how they felt or how they're feeling, or not, right? You can offer a physical comfort, or, if your child wants that, and also accept if your child's just not ready or open to that quite yet, like be okay with that as well. But using those words, I'm sorry for acting in the way that I did. And it can be as straightforward as that.
Yeah, I really love that. I feel like it's really important. It teaches a lot of things. Like, what do you see as this repair moment? Moments like these, we have endless opportunities for repair.
Yeah.
What are kids taking away from that kind of interaction?
Yeah. I think what's true is that we kind of forget, like, for parents, kids are some of our most important attachment relationships, right? We have our partners or spouses, we have our friends, we have our parents. Our kids are also really, really important attachment relationships. So I think it's a reflection for kids of that, right? You're important enough to me that I'm going to slow down and talk to you and take accountability for this thing that I think caused you harm, right? So it's a reminder of that. And I think when we talk about this concept of internal working models, a psychological term around how do kids start to develop a sense of self and who they are, right? When you say to a child, like, you're important enough to me to apologize to and acknowledge, and even though it's a little kind of awkward, or it's like a kid can feel like, I'm worthy of time and attention. I'm worthy of being apologized to. I'm worthy of being cared for. I can walk around the world with some dignity, like some sense of like what I deserve, right? When somebody mistreats me or somebody harms me, the kind of association is, well, I deserve for that to be acknowledged, as opposed to that can just be dismissed. It's okay. It's okay for me to have this kind of mistreatment in this relationship, right? That's supposed to be about care and love and safety, right? So that's a huge part of it, right? Is that building up a sense of self who feels dignified and able to walk around the world, being able to say, no, I don't like the way you treated me and I don't deserve that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Your sense of self-worth is you learn something about who you are and how much you mean to another person. And also, as you were talking, I was also thinking about the relationship, that like when a relationship is important to you, you're modeling something, right? You're modeling, like, when a relationship is important to you, and you've made a mistake, you acknowledge that mistake, and that like helps the relationship. Like, the relationship means enough to you to take care of it.
Right.
And when a relationship means enough to you, you will care for that relationship, the person in it, but you benefit from that relationship being cared for as well.
Totally. As in our language, the kind of patterns of rupture and repair, right? When there's a rupture, there's something that is off sync between a parent and child, where there's some hurt feelings, and then you repair it. It can often strengthen the relationship. You can learn a lot more about yourself. You can learn more about your kid. You can learn more about the dynamic between you. It's an area to deepen connection and understanding of each other.
Absolutely. And it's really, really hard. It's interesting. I find that, some parents haven't done it before. And there is a lot of shame, as you're talking about, that may get in the way of a parent taking accountability for doing something harmful, inadvertently harmful, on purpose harmful, whatever.
Right.
And, one of the things that I have found so interesting in my own parenting life is just how forgiving my child is. It's just, I'm always like, wow, like, you are so kind. Like, you are really letting me off the hook here. Like, oh my goodness.
Right. We don't want to take advantage of that, right? If a kid is like flexible and open to receiving repair, that's wonderful. And like, if you notice yourself doing that often, wow, here I go having to repair again. That's really a time to step back and say, what's happening with me? What's going on with me? And again, do this kind of zooming out reflection of what's making you feel more frustrated or have less patience or, losing some tolerance for your child's behaviors in some way. So check yourself if you're doing it too often and having to apologize. It's great to apologize. It's great to repair. And if it's happening every other day, that's a cue to kind of slow down and see what other support you might be able to get.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a cue, a signal that you may need more care for your internal self.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I love this. I mean, I'm so excited you've written this book. Parents need it so much. Again, it is called the Self-Regulation Workbook.
The Self-Regulation Workbook for children ages 5 through 8. Yeah, there's a section that's just for parents for their own kind of reflection and learning about concept. There's a section that's for parents and kids that's interactive that they can do together. And one of the sections that I like the most is a section where we interviewed 5 through 8-year-old kids on experiences they had when they were upset and how they ended up kind of calming themselves down. Because I think in the kind of theme of modeling, I think kids can get a lot and gain a lot from seeing how other kids talk about their feelings. So that's one of my favorite sections in it.
Yes, I'm so glad. The Self-Regulation Workbook for children ages 5 to 8. Kahlila Robinson co-authored this book. And, I also just want to let you know that, when I was going through the book and reading it, I really love those self-reflection pieces, like the ways in which the parent can sort of look inward. Obviously that's my whole practice is around that. And, just how much of a difference it makes for a parent to just slow down and check inside. So many, parents will come to me for like the answer, the parenting answer. But so many of those answers are like really inside of us.
Absolutely.
I'm so amazed by that all the time. And so
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that your book makes a lot of space for that.
Yeah. It's not always like a strategy. It's a mindset shift or just holding some space for deeper curiosity about yourself. That
Absolutely.
Can be huge. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Thanks for talking about your book. And before we go, let the listeners know how they can find you if they want to work with you, how they can follow your work if they want to do that.
Sure. I have a website. My website is KahlilaRobinsonPhD.com. I'm on Instagram, Kahlila Robinson PhD. And you can reach me through my website. There's a link to contact me there if you're interested in learning more about my practice.
Yay. I'm so glad we did this. Yes, and I'd love to have you back talking about various other family psychology topics.
Thank you, Nanika. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for being here and sharing your expertise with us. Project Parenthood is a quick and dirty tips podcast. Dan Firebend is our audio engineer. Holly Hutchings is our director of podcasts. Morgan Christensen heads up operations and advertising. And a special welcome to Rebecca Sebastian, our new manager of marketing and publicity. Thanks also to Nat Hoops for his support, and most of all, thanks to you for listening.